Night. Chapter test. This assessment will show you what you know and what you have learned from all three. All 13. This assessment has 3 parts. From night. Part 1, core knowledge of the text. Part 2, application to night. Part 3, application in a new text. Here are some tips to help you do your best. Be sure to read all the directions carefully. Read and annotate all text provided. Read each question carefully. Read all answers before you make your choice. If you see a quotation or section of the text reference, go back and skim that part of the text where you choose your answer. Part 1, core knowledge of the novel. In the beginning of the story, where does Ellie and his family live? A, Saget, B, Auschwitz, C, Poland, or D, Birkenau? Number 2, who was Moish the Beetle? A community member who tries to warn the people about the horrors facing the Jews. B, a community member who serves as a spiritual leader for Wiesel's father. C, a community member who becomes exiled by the people. Or D, a community member who begs for food and judges people for their sins. Number 3, who orders the persecution of the Jews? A, German soldiers. B, Hitler. C, other Jews. Or D, Christians. Number 4, what happens to Ellie's dad in the end? A, he wakes up in a hospital and sees his reflection as a corpse. B, he falls asleep in the snow and freezes to death. C, he abandons Ellie to increase his chance of survival. Or D, he becomes ill with dysentery and is taken to the crematorium. Number 5, what is not a theme of night? Not a theme. A, in the face of persecution, a person can still retain their humanity. B, it's important to remember people who were victims of the Holocaust so that history doesn't repeat itself. C, dehumanization can cause people to make survival their number 1 priority at all costs. Or D, there's too much oppression in the world to help everyone. Number 6, what are different author crafts Wiesel uses to convey his ideas? Name at least 2. Pause here so you can write down your answer. Number 7, explain how Wiesel uses one of the crafts you named above and its impact. Again, pause here to write your answer. Part 2, application to night. Read and annotate the following excerpt from Night. When you're done, you'll respond to this prompt. How does Wiesel develop his commentary about the effects of living through genocide? In this section, Ellie and the other Jews have been traveling on the train with Miss Schachter, and they finally reach Auschwitz. Our nerves had reached a breaking point. Our very skin was aching. It was as though madness had infected all of us. We gave up. A few young men forced her to sit down, then bound and gagged her. Silence fell again. The small boy sat next to his mother, crying. I started to breathe normally again as I listened to the rhythmic pounding of the wheels on the tracks as the train raced through the night. We could begin to doze again, to rest, to dream. And so an hour or 2 passed. Another scream jolted us. The woman had broken free of her bonds and was shouting louder than before. Look at the fire! Look at the flames! Flames everywhere! Once again, the young men bound and gagged her. When they actually struck her, people shouted their approval. Keep her quiet. Make that mad woman shut up. She's not the only one here. She received several blows to the head, blows that could have been lethal. Her son was clinging desperately to her, not uttering a word. He was no longer crying. The night seemed endless. By daybreak, Miss Schachter had settled down. Crouching in her corner, her blank gaze fixed on some faraway place. She no longer saw us. She remained like that all day, mute, absent, alone in the midst of us. Toward evening, she began to shout again, "The fire! Over there!" She was pointing somewhere in the darkness, somewhere in the distance, always the same place. No one felt like beating her anymore. The heat, the thirst, the stench, the lack of air. were suffocating us. Yet all there was nothing compared to her screams, which tore us apart. A few more days, and all of us would have started to scream. The train did not move again. The afternoon went by slowly. Then the doors of the wagon slid open. 2 men were given permission to fetch water. When they came back, they told us that they had learned, in exchange for a gold watch, that this was the final destination. We were to leave the train here. There was a labor camp on the site. The conditions were good. Families would not be separated. Only the young would work in the factories. The old and the sick would find work in the fields. Confidence soared. Suddenly, we felt free of the previous night's terror. We gave thanks to God. Miss Schachter remained huddled in her corner, mute, untouched by the optimism around her. Her little one was stroking her hand. Dusk began to fill the wagon. We ate what was left of our food. At 10 o'clock in the evening, we were all trying to find a position for a quick nap, and soon we were dozing. Suddenly, look at the fire! Look at the flames! Over there! With a start, we awoke and rushed to the window yet again. We had believed her, if only for an instant, but there was nothing outside but darkness. We returned to our places, shame in our souls, but fear gnawing at us nevertheless. As she went on howling, she was struck again. Only with great difficulty did we succeed in quieting her down. The man in charge of our wagon called out to a German officer strolling down the platform, asking him to have the sick woman moved to a hospital car. Patience, the German replied. Patience. She'll be taken there soon. Around 11 o'clock, the train began to move again. We pressed against the windows. The convoy was rolling slowly. A quarter of an hour later, it began to slow down even more. Through the windows, we saw barbed wire. We understood that this was the camp. We had forgotten Miss Schachter's existence. Suddenly, there was a terrible scream. Jews, look! Look at the fire! Look at the flames! And as the train stopped, this time we saw flames rising from a tall chimney into a black sky. Miss Schachter had fallen silent on her own, mute again, indifferent, absent. She had returned to her corner. We stared at the flames in the darkness. A wretched stench floated in the air. Abruptly, our doors opened. Strange-looking creatures dressed in striped jackets and black pants jumped into the wagon. Holding flashlights and sticks, they began to strike at us left and right, shouting, Everybody out! Leave everything inside! Hurry up! We jumped out and glanced at Miss Schachter. Her little boy was still holding her hand. In front of us, those flames. In the air, the smell of burning flesh. It must have been around midnight. We had arrived in Birkenau. Number 8, open response. Answer the question below to the best of your ability. You must use evidence from the text above, but you can pull in evidence and ideas from other sections of the text. How does We Sell begin to develop an important message in this section? Students may utilize accurate craft moves learned throughout the unit. Possible arguments. Through the use of the motif of fire, We Sell develops a theme that the impact of dehumanization is painful and horrific. Through the use of repetition, We Sell develops a theme that dehumanization of Holocaust was horrendous and long-lasting. Through the anecdote of Miss Schachter, We Sell develops a theme that Jews had no idea of the horrors they would face. Pause here to write your answer, and then move down to part 3 when you're ready to move on. Part 3, application in a new text. The excerpt below is a speech to the United Nations by education activist and Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai. When you're done, you'll consider how Malala conveys or shows her argument. United Nations, New York, July 12th, 2013. Education activist Malala Yousafzai marks her 16th birthday on Friday, July 12th, 2013 at the United Nations by giving her first high-level public appearance and statement on the importance of education. Malala became a public figure when she was shot by the Taliban while traveling to school last year in Pakistan, targeted because of her committed campaigning for the right of all girls to an education. Flown to the United Kingdom to recover, she is now back at school and continues to advocate for every child's right to education. In support of the UN Secretary General Global Education First Initiative, on July 12th, declared as Malala Day, the President of the UN General Assembly and the UN Special Envoy for Global Education, with the support of a World at School initiative, are organizing the UN Youth Assembly, where more than 500 young leaders from around the world will convene to accelerate the goal of getting all children, especially girls, in school and learning by 2015. Here's Malala's speech. Today, it is an honor for me to be speaking again after a long time. Being here with such honorable people is a great moment in my life. I don't know where to begin my speech. I don't know what people would be expecting me to say. But first of all, thank you to God for whom we are all equal. And thank you to every person who has prayed for my fast recovery in a new life. I cannot believe how much love people have shown me. I have received thousands of good wish cards and gifts from all over the world. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to the children whose innocent words encourage me. Thank you to my elders whose prayers strengthened me. Dear brothers and sisters, do remember one thing. Malala Day is not my day. Today is the day of every woman, every boy, and every girl who have raised their voice for their rights. There are hundreds of human rights activists and social workers who are not only speaking for human rights, but who are struggling to achieve their goals of education, peace, and equality. Thousands of people have been killed by the terrorists, and millions have been injured. I am just one of them. So here I stand, one girl among many. I speak not for myself, but for all girls and boys. I raise up my voice, not so that I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. Those who have fought for their rights, their right to live in peace, their right to be treated with dignity, their right to equality of opportunity, their right to be education. Dear friends, on the 9th of October 2012, the Taliban shot me on the left side of my forehead. They shot my friends too. They thought that the bullets would silence us, but they failed. And then out of that silence came thousands of voices. The terrorists thought that they would change our aims and stop our ambitions, but nothing changed in my life except this. Weakness, fear, and hopelessness died. Strength, power, and courage was born. I am the same Malala. My ambitions are the same. My hopes are the same. My dreams are the same. Dear sisters and brothers, I am not against anyone. Neither am I here to speak in terms of personal revenge against the Taliban or any other terrorist groups. I am here to speak up for the right of education of every child. I want education for the sons and the daughters of all the extremists, especially the Taliban. I do not even hate the Talib who shot me. Even if there is a gun in my hand and he stands in front of me, I would not shoot him. This is the compassion that I have learned from Muhammad, the prophet of mercy, Jesus Christ, and Lord Buddha. This is the legacy of change that I have inherited from Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. This is the philosophy of nonviolence that I have learned from Gandhi Ji, Baka Khan, and Mother Teresa. And this is the forgiveness that I have learned from my mother and father. This is what my soul is telling me. Be peaceful and love everyone. Dear sisters and brothers, we realize the importance of light when we see darkness. We realize the importance of our voice when we are silenced. In the same way, when we were in Sawat, the north of Pakistan, we realized the importance of pens and books when we saw the guns. The wise saying, the pen is mightier than sword, was true. The extremists are afraid of books and pens. The power of education frightens them. They are afraid of women. The power of the voice of women frightens them. And that is why they killed 14 innocent medical students in the recent attack in Quetta. And that is why they killed many female teachers and polio workers in Khyber, Putun, Kwa, and Fata. That is why they are blasting schools every day. Because they were and they are afraid of change, afraid of the equality that we will bring into our society. I remember that there was a boy in our school who was asked by a journalist, "Why are the Taliban against education?" He answered very simply. By pointing to his book, he said, "A Talib doesn't know what is written inside this book." They think that God is a tiny little conservative being who would send girls to hell just because of going to school. The terrorists are misusing the name of Islam and Pashtun society for their own personal benefits. Pakistan is a peace-loving democratic country. Pashtuns want education for their daughters and sons. And Islam is a religion of peace, humanity, and brotherhood. Islam says that it is not only each child's right to get an education, rather it is their duty and responsibility. Honorable Secretary General, peace is necessary for education. In many parts of the world, especially Pakistan and Afghanistan, terrorism, wars, and conflicts stop children to go to their schools. We are really tired of these wars. Women and children are suffering in many ways in many parts of the world. In India, innocent and poor children are victims of child labor. Many schools have been destroyed in Nigeria. People in Afghanistan have been affected by the hurdles of extremism for decades. Young girls have to do domestic child labor and are forced to get married at early age. Poverty, ignorance, injustice, racism, and the deprivation of basic rights are the main problems faced by both men and women. Dear fellows, today I am focusing on women's rights and girls' education because they are suffering the most. There was a time when women social activists asked men to stand up for their rights, but this time we will do it by ourselves. I am not telling men to step away from speaking for women's rights. Rather, I am focusing on women to be independent to fight for themselves. Dear brothers and sisters, now it is time to speak up. So today we call upon the world leaders to change their strategic policies in favor of peace and prosperity. We call upon the world leaders that all the peace deals must protect women and children's rights. A deal that goes against the dignity of women and their rights is unacceptable. We call upon all government to ensure free compulsory education for every child all over the world. We call upon all governments to fight against terrorism and violence, to protect children from brutality and harm. We call upon the developed nations to support the expansion of educational opportunities for girls in the developing world. We call upon all communities to be tolerant, to reject prejudice based on caste, creed, sect, religion, or gender, to ensure freedom and equality for women so that they can flourish. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back. We call upon our sisters around the world to be brave, to embrace the strength within themselves and realize their full potential. Dear brothers and sisters, we want schools and education for every child's bright future. We will continue our journey to our destination of peace and education for everyone. No one can stop us. We will speak for our rights and we will bring change through our voice. We must believe in the power and the strength of our words. Our words can change the world because we are all together, united for the cause of education. And if we want to achieve our goal, then let us empower ourselves with the weapon of knowledge. Let us shield ourselves with unity and togetherness. Dear brothers and sisters, we must not forget that millions of people are suffering from poverty, injustice, and ignorance. We must not forget that millions of children are out of school. We must not forget that our sisters and brothers are waiting for a bright, peaceful future. So let us wage a global struggle against illiteracy, poverty, and terrorism. Let us pick up our books and pens. They are our most powerful tools. One child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. Education is the only solution. Education first. Number 9. Which statement does not describe Malala's appeal? Does not. A, she wants safety and protection for women around the world. B, she wants people to remember the prejudices and oppression that women face around the world. C, she wants world leaders to go to war against the Taliban. Or D, she wants young girls in Afghanistan to have a right to education. Reread this excerpt from the second page. I remember there was a boy in our school who was asked by a journalist, "Why are the Taliban against education?" He answered very simply. By pointing to his book, he said, "A Talib doesn't know what is written inside this book. They think that God is a tiny little conservative being who would send girls to hell just because of going to school." The terrorists are misusing the name of Islam and Pashtun society for their own personal benefits. Pakistan is a peace-loving democratic country. Pashtuns want education for their daughters and sons. And Islam is a religion of peace, humanity, and brotherhood. Islam says that it is not only each child's right to get education, rather it is their duty and responsibility. Why does Malala include the story about the boy? Is it A, to support her argument that the Taliban members are illiterate and therefore want to keep all their citizens from reading? B, to support her argument that the Taliban has a misunderstanding of the impact of books and wrongfully uses Islam to justify not educating young girls? C, to support her argument that the Taliban members are devout Muslims who want to inspire all citizens to only focus on religion? Or D, to support her argument that the Taliban believes that only boys should have an education because they are good readers? Number 11, open response. Answer the question below to the best of your ability. You may use the passage and knowledge organizer to help you answer. How does Malala show her argument or her message in this speech? Students may utilize accurate craft moves learned throughout the year. Possible proficient arguments. Malala shows her arguments that world leaders should advocate for the education of women and children through the use of repetition and short sentence structure. Malala shows her argument that world leaders should defend women's right to education in developing countries through diction and anecdotes. Diction is word choice. Anecdote is a story. Good luck, scholars.